Holy God, may your word be spoken. May your word be heard. Amen. Please be seated. It was striking to me to encounter a parable in our gospel today. After these last few weeks of readings, after the last few months of life in this country and in this time, I felt caught up by events and by the vast moral questions that all of us are wrestling with in our hearts. And vital questions, important questions, things that we must answer. We must engage our society for the better. Things have to change politically. But a parable has this spiritual quality, this invitational quality that woke something different in me when I encountered the readings getting ready for this Sunday. And I hope I can invite you into it. Because for us to be gathering in worship here, blessed to be in this place, you gathering with us in your homes, we're here because of the Spirit. We're here because of the Spirit. There's something that is unique about a church setting, and it's the Spirit. So when Jesus gets these people excited in his own day, and he wants to invite them more deeply into what he knows, into his relationship with God, he offers them parables. He offers them parables. And he didn't invent parables. Parables are an ancient way that people of faith have understood God's invitation to us. A parable is a little bit of a mystery. The meaning's not obvious. It invites us in to see characters and story and setting in a particular way, but then it asks us to shift our perspective and see how the story wasn't about them, it's about me. It's about you. As an individual. And I think we need to lift that up in this moment as people of faith. We're in a time of incredible social change and social movements, but it's individuals coming together for causes and purposes. And when those causes and purposes are good, it's awesome. When they're not good, being wise to the Spirit helps us move along with things that are good and keep away from things that are not. So a parable is an invitation to our own consciousness, our own heart, to reflect on where are we in our relationship with God and with one another. Where have we been? Where are we going? How do we get there? Now, the parable of, we hear today, the farmer, also known as the parable of the sower, in other circles and translations of the Bible, I suspect you've heard this before. Am I correct? Have you heard this parable before? You've heard this parable before. Maybe more than once, if you're at all a church nerd, as most of us are. You know, you're watching a service on YouTube on a Sunday morning, you're kind of a church nerd, if you didn't know that, and that's a good thing to be. And if you're just dropping in and you're not a church nerd, welcome to it. It's a good life. So the parable of the sower, I've had multiple circles of faith that I've been a part of, and we've talked about and engaged with this parable. And one of the recurring responses to it is a sense of feeling a little afraid. A little afraid. And if you can take this parable like it's fresh, like not you've heard it for the 10th time, but you hear it fresh, the fear lies in this. What kind of soil am I? What kind of soil am I? Am I the path where it just gets taken away as soon as I hear it? Am I rocky soil? I hear it, I get excited, but it's actually not getting deep into me? Am I surrounded by thorns that are choking off this good, holy thing that could otherwise grow in my life? Nobody feels like good soil, in my experience. Do you feel like good soil? It's a good day if you feel like good soil. Most of us don't identify with the good soil. Most of us don't. But maybe there are moments where you have felt like good soil. something good and holy moved in your life and you saw how it wasn't just a small little thing, it was a blessing of abundance all around you in all the relationships and places that you are a part of. This parable, and we get an interpretation of this parable. We get an interpretation of it right away. And sometimes that's not the best thing. Because the parable, it should turn over. It should turn over in our hearts and minds before we get easy answers about what it is or what it means. Because what's most important is what it means to you today. That's what's most important about the parable. So today, in your spiritual life, what kind of soil are you? What kind of soil are you today? Are you taking a shallow kind of joyfulness in things that doesn't get into the roots that can last through the hard times that come? Are other concerns rising up around you and you can't focus on the spiritual because important injustices and material things are demanding your attention? Or is it good? Is it good today? Funny thing about parables, I think you could argue that the Bible is a parable. I think you could argue that. Some of you know I'm married to a fellow minister who's part of a very small denomination, no insult, honey. A small denomination, smaller than, you gotta be small to be smaller than the Episcopal Church, because we're small. Smaller than the Episcopal Church. And they're grounded in the theology and writings of a gentleman named Emanuel Swedenborg, who, after the sermon, look him up. Fascinating character. Fascinating character. Prolific writer, spiritual person, mystic, really, really fascinating person. And Swedenborg invites us to look at the Bible as a whole, as telling a kind of parable about human spiritual development and our relationship with God. From Genesis to Revelation. It's a spiritual journey that we are on. The whole book, a parable. That's a very evocative way to engage with the Bible as a whole. And handy in a time when so many of our Christian brothers and sisters of a more conservative bent try to make it literally true, which I think breaks our hearts, minds, and spirits. I think you can't hold the Bible as literally true and be a person of faith in your wholeness. That's a very tightly packed comment, and I could unpack it later. I'm going to let it sit there for now. For us, that idea of the whole, the Bible as a whole is a parable, can also take up sections of it. We've been hearing the story of our matriarchs and patriarchs in the faith. Abraham, and Sarah, and Isaac, and Rebekah, and we just met Jacob. We just met Jacob today. Bit of a scoundrel, this Jacob. Bit of a scoundrel, more to come. So stay tuned. Their story is also a parable about the human relationship with God and our capacity to grow and be more conscious and be more free and more responsible for who we are and what we do and the relationships that we have. We talked some last week about how we live this life and we're in conflict. We have these competing demands upon us in life. We have spiritual demands and we have material demands. We have our need to be in relationship. We have our need for time alone. We have our need to be fed. We have our need to be able to not eat for a time. All of these things compete within us. It's a core human experience. And Rebekah, God bless her, finds herself experiencing it in her body. I don't want to deny that she actually had that experience, but for her, she becomes a parable for all of us. She's holding inside of her these conflicting powers, energies, forces. And what does she say when they start to fight? I don't want it. If this is what it is, I want out. Too late, sorry. Friends, when you feel that conflict within you, when you want, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The conflict is inherent in our journey. What we need to do is find our path through it to peace and wholeness. And the story of this family of faithful matriarchs and patriarchs, tells this story of a move to wholeness. A move to wholeness. So the forces, the children, the boys, the twin boys that are in conflict inside Rebekah, Esau and Jacob, we get a pretty open clue to the kind of human energy that they embody. Esau is a what? You can look at your notes, it's okay. Esau does what? He's a hunter. He's a hunter, yeah, right? He goes out into the wild and he kills things. That's okay, right?
And eats them.
And he eats them. He eats them. And his dad likes that, right? Isaac likes that. They bond over that. What kind of a person is Jacob? He cooks. He's quieter.
He's a mama's boy.
He's a mama's boy. He's a mama's boy. He likes to stay at home. I sympathize with you. I would rather stay at home. And, mama's boy, I guess. Love your mom. Say again? He feels his feelings, perhaps. He feels his feelings, yeah. These are very different ways to be human, right? Neither good nor bad, right? One not better than the other. And when they're in conflict, we human beings, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. In this case, the Bible has a certain favorite. The story of the Bible as a whole takes a favorite between Esau and Jacob. And it's Jacob. Not only does Rebekah seem to favor Jacob, as the way the story unfolds, God kind of seems to favor Jacob too. So one thing about Esau and his rugged hunter persona. Personality is a better word than persona. Does he have the long view in mind or the short view in mind? He has the short view in mind. He has the short view in mind. He's been out hunting and he's famished. He's exerting his energy and he needs to eat. And he feels so hungry, he feels like he's going to die. Is he going to die, by the way? No. No, his feelings are kind of knocking him aside, skewing his perspective. Jacob has been waiting. Seems like Jacob has been planning for this opportunity, for this moment. And Jacob offers to feed Esau, but he wants something. What does he want? He wants Esau's birthright. So, step back a second. We're in the ancient world. We're in the ancient world in this story. And the male firstborn is a person of especial prestige and power. In some circles in our world, that's still true. In some circles in our world, that's still true. I found myself, who's the next heir to the throne of England?
Charles.
And he's the what?
First son.
First son. Yeah. Yeah. And that's true for his children, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, in some circles, still in play. No need to debate that. It was a reality in our culture, and in some circles it still manifests. So, in this ancient world, there was an understanding that that which is older is better. That which is older is better. And if you were someone who was engaged in cultural anthropology or history, you would see throughout the ancient world there was almost always a sense that there was a before time that was vastly better than the time that we're living in now. In the ancient world, it was an understanding that there was a golden age, and we have fallen down from it. Older things are better. Now that I'm older, that's okay. So this story of Jacob and Esau is profoundly subversive culturally. It's saying the younger is actually the one who has more life and more of a future than the older. The Bible is culturally subversive in its time. And that idea that the future is going to be brighter than the past, that's a radical notion. It's so ingrained in us as Americans. For many people of Christian faith, it's so ingrained in us that it's hard to step out and recognize moments that challenge that idea when it wasn't the case that people felt hopeful for the future, that people revered the past over the future. This parable of these matriarchs and patriarchs playing out now in the relationships of Jacob and Esau, they're setting in motion an idea that in God we have hope for the future, and that younger, newer things are more precious than the things of the past. When we get in dark times, as we live in now, I think those ancient ways of thinking sometimes activate and manifest. Do you find that in your own self sometimes? You think about past times when things are difficult and it seems like they were better then? Not always, sometimes. Certainly in our culture, it manifests. It manifests. I think about that slogan, "Make America Great Again." An appeal to a past, arguing that what has become, this newer thing, is not good. It's deep in us. And the Bible's pushing against it. It's inviting us to join with the newer, younger things and build a newer future aligned with God's values. It's a parable. It's a parable about us. It's a parable about our culture. It's a parable about our world. It's a parable about human life, human species, the whole human species. We're in a moment, but it's a moment that's in relationship to the moments past and the moments to come. I feel some breath in that. I feel some breath in that. Do you have hope for the future? And do you have a sense of the vast, hopeful horizon of possibility that God is inviting us into? That's the rich soil, friends. That's the soil where one little thing gives 30, 60, 100-fold things in the future. Let's each of us be just one little thing, day by day, and sow seeds of hope and compassion and mercy and joy. And let our seeds produce 30, 60, 100 more, so that the world that we move into in these weeks, months, and years ahead is a joyful, more hopeful, more just place than all of the years that lie behind.